Welcome back to Simplifying the State. I'm Adam Watson.
And I'm Nicholas Barham.
All right, so we're going to kick off this episode, and I'm going to ask Nicholas something. What do you think the French, mosquitoes, and Central America all have in common?
The French mosquitoes?
No, the French, mosquitoes, and Central America.
They all are involved in the Panama Canal.
Correct. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about the Panama Canal, the history of the Panama Canal, and why Trump is suddenly so interested in the Panama Canal. All right, so Nicholas, you want to give us a brief rundown of the history of it?
Yeah, I can do that. So the Panama Canal started as a project that was supposed to be completed by the French, but they eventually gave up and thought it was too hard. But then the United States came in, and as a sort of expense for Panamanian independence, the newly independent Panama gave up a short strip of their territory, which the U.S. built the Panama
Wait,
Canal.
what do you mean in exchange for Panama's independence?
Basically, the U.S. helped Panama win their war of independence against Colombia, and in exchange for that, they essentially forced Panama to give up what would then become the Panama Canal.
Oh, okay. All right, continue.
Yeah, and the Panama Canal was eventually finished, and there were a bunch of ways in which it was ran, and in 1977, Jimmy Carter and Panama worked together to give the Panama Canal officially back to Panama, and that process was completed under Bill Clinton. And ever since 2000, the Panama Canal has been under Panamanian control, and certain companies control certain aspects of it, are in charge of making sure it's good, but at the end of the day, it is under the control of Panama.
Yeah. So kind of connecting that to today. So at a press conference before he was inaugurated as president, President Trump spoke about wanting to take back the Panama Canal. He also spoke about a bunch of other things, including taking back Greenland from Denmark, although not taking back because it was never ours except for that brief point in World War II, but we'll get to that when we talk about Greenland. But so he talked about wanting to take it back and taking it back under U.S. control because he claimed that the Panamanians were essentially scamming us or not treating us fairly and giving preferential treatment to other countries, specifically China. He referenced it again in his inauguration speech when he talked about falsely claimed that the canal was under the control of the Chinese government. It's under the control of the Panama Canal Authority, which is a Panamanian government agency, which essentially is in charge of the whole Panama Canal. What he was probably referencing is that various Chinese companies and Chinese firms or firms based in Hong Kong have been investing in the Panama Canal, so have firms and companies from other countries, so that's not really unique. But I guess China being a possible being an adversary of the United States, it's probably more concerning when they do it. So he didn't rule out military force when he spoke about the Panama Canal. He said that he may use both military or economic persuasions, meaning he maybe could impose tariffs or something like that on Panama to either work out a new trade agreement or maybe just full on take control back. Marco Rubio, who's the Secretary of State, he's going to Panama for his first state visit. So, interesting to see if maybe that has something to do with, probably does have something to do with President Trump wanting to take back the canal.
Can you go into a bit more detail about Chinese presence in the Panama Canal and the area around it?
Yeah. So, I mean, there are various Chinese firms which have been investing in areas around the Panama Canal, various projects. Some of them are funding bridges. Some of them are funding rail lines, port facilities, etc. Typical stuff that you would do in a canal of that size. So the Chinese have been increasing their investments in Panama. They've been increasing their investments all across South and Central America. But again, probably because it's such a vital trade artery is why the U.S. is so interested in it.
So, like, I forgot, but like, what was the most recent point you made before my question?
The I don't know what did I say about it.
Because like I had a question I was going to probe about it, but I forgot.
Marco
So
Rubio state visit.
yeah. So about that, I've heard that the current president of Panama said that the Panama Canal is not up for grabs and there will be no discussion on it. But Marco Rubio pressed that there will indeed be discussion on it. What about that?
Right. Well, I'm sure the Panamanian president probably isn't going to, say that their territory is up for grabs. I mean, I'm sure Marco Rubio probably does want there to be a discussion on it, but it's unclear about what that discussion will be about, whether it will be about, again, like I said, renegotiating the treaty to maybe make it more favorable to the United States. They may talk about the U.S. wanting to take it over, although Colombia did say that they would protect Panama's independence. So it's kind of funny seeing the former controller of the Panamanian area now saying that they will defend Panama against another country trying to take its land. Real quick, could you talk a little bit more about that treaty? Because I don't know much about it.
Like the one that gave the Panama Canal to Panama?
Yeah, because I know that was like one of Jimmy Carter's biggest things he did as president. Could you talk about that a little more?
Yeah, so the treaty which gave the Panama Canal back to Panama also had a few clauses that called for the neutrality of the canal, which essentially means that Panama cannot utilize the canal in foreign relations. Say they can't increase prices for a certain nation, they can't decrease prices for a certain nation, they can't close a canal for certain nations either. And so it basically just makes it, for the world. Although, there's still you still have to pay to Panama to go through it.
Right, right. So basically, it ensures like every country has equal access to it. One country won't be overcharged or undercharged or anything like that.
Precisely, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Why did he sign the treaty? Like, what led up to it? Like, what was the catalyst? Because I don't know what would lead a president out of the blue to just say, "Here's a vital thing we have, a very strategic interest. Here's it back." What led to that?
Okay, so really the whole thing that begun the process of giving the Panama Canal back to Panama was was a riot in 1964 about the right to fly the Panamanian flag in the canal zone between a bunch of residents around U.S. residents around the area and Panamanians, and that that caused a interruption in diplomatic relations between Panama and the United States, and there was some political turmoil from 1964 until 1976, which disallowed negotiations between the two countries. And in the presidential campaign and elections in 1976, which Jimmy Carter did win, then Jimmy Carter's appointees was some of them, one being Sol Lunowitz. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. And Cyrus Vance was able to convince Carter that the giving back the canal to Panama would be of great importance and would be a good thing to do.
Right.
But yeah, and so that's really why they did it. It was set as a priority in the start of the Carter administration.
I feel like, do you think they would invade like Panama to take it back?
I think that I think that it's unlikely, really,
Yeah,
because doing like invading Panama to secure the Panama Canal, which is already open to access for them, would
right.
be a very bad move economically as well as diplomatically between the US and really everyone in the world,
Yeah,
because the US uses, like, out of all countries that use the Panama Canal, the US uses it the most. Second is China, but China uses the Panama Canal to get to like ports in the US to trade. And
right.
so it would really just be a net negative for the US, even if they secure the canal and, you know,
Yeah.
just have their interests be secured there, which they mostly are.
Yeah, because I saw something that it was like the most common trade route that goes through the Panama Canal is like New York to Shanghai or something like that. I mean, an invasion of Panama wouldn't be like completely without precedent. I mean, in like 1989, I think it was 1989. The U.S. Yeah, 1989. The U.S. did Operation Just Cause, where basically we invaded Panama to remove their leader, who was like very publicly guilty of criminal acts. I mean, we propped him up during the whole anti-communist intervene in Central America thing, and then George Bush the first, not the second, invaded Panama to change the government and all that. So it wouldn't be like completely without precedent. I mean, we didn't. Uh, the world didn't really react real positive to that, but there was at least a uh, somewhat good enough reason that we could at least like explain, whereas this thing would probably be pretty hard to explain given that we already have access to the canal at the same rates as everyone else. But yeah. All right. Thanks for listening to this episode. We'll be back next week where we'll talk about uh, another one of President Trump's possible territorial uh, expansions, the northern neighbor of Greenland. So we'll talk about the history of that and kind of why he's so interested in it now. All right, see you next time.